Hey, and welcome back to a special episode. Today we're having a look at Rotarycraft. We're not going to do a spotlight, and we're not going to do a tutorial on it in any way. We're going to go through the physics and math, how Rotarycraft works, and hopefully after the episode you can say, today I learned. And in the end we'll go through a few things you can do that are awesome, that might give you a good reason to get started in Rotarycraft. We start off with the DC electric engine. This is your first thing that you make, and when you turn it on it spins. All it requires is a redstone signal and it spins. That's the power of Rotarycraft. It's rotational, so you can right click on most things, most machines, and the DC electric engine you cannot. You can right click, but nothing will happen. There is a thing that is very useful in this mod, and that's the Rotarycraft handbook. This is how I learned Rotarycraft. I have not had any extreme explanations. I do have a decent understanding of math and physics, and then I had this book, and I found out about it when playing Monster, Feed the Beast Monster, and that's how I learned this mod. The DC electric engine is here, under here generation, and the first one, DC electric engine. It's the simplest one, and there is so much time put down to making this handbook. Not reading it is a disgrace. But you have three values on everything that is rotational, and that's the radians per second, which is how fast something rotates, and it's the torque, and that's how strong the rotation is. In this case it's 4 Newton meters at 256 radians per second, which gives 1024 watts, or 1.024 kilowatts. That's might be complicated for some, but it's actually not that difficult. It's 4 Newton meters multiplied by 256 gives us 1024, and that's how it works. And if you use these buttons here on most machines, you can see the requirements, and the output for this is, as I said, 4 256 1024 watts. And watts is then the power, and the equivalent in imperial measurements would be horsepower. That can also be read in the first one here. Basic terms: watts, kilowatts and megawatts is a unit of power. Newton meters, a unit of torque. Radians per second, a unit of angular rotational velocity, which is basically how fast it turns. And then it's a small explanation of the physics. Relevant physics, all interesting, but you can read that yourself. So let's turn that off and go to the next thing. How to transmit this power. We have shafts. I'm using the top end bedrock shaft here because this is not a tutorial. So the shaft, I need to go into creative to do that. A top end shaft here because it's not a tutorial. If we now turn it on, you can see that they all spin, and if we go here, the output here is 256 radians per second and 4 Newton meters of torque. If we hook it up to the shaft cross here, which is another thing that we can have, it will spin here. But this one won't, because it's a cross. You can put power through here and through here, and they do not connect to each other. And now we come into another nifty tool, the screwdriver. If we put down the bedrock shaft, you see it has two boxes that ghostly appears when you place the block, and then they get removed. The green one is the input and the red one is the output, and this is true for every machine. If we look at the shaft cross with an angular transducer, we can see the angular measurements and also the boxes. So we can put power from here and out here, from here and out here. And that's how that one works. The angular transducer is one of the most useful tools ever because you can use it on basically anything to get to know everything, including tanks and stuff from Rotarycraft. Another tool is the screwdriver, which you can use to rotate stuff. Like you can see the boxes move around. So that's the two tools you need. We have the shaft junction. Currently has 2 inputs and 1 output. And when we right click we can turn it around in all the possible directions like a Tetris piece. If we shift right click, it splits power. So the input is here, let's put the input over here and the output here and here. Right click on it without the screwdriver, you can tell it how to do the split of power. So it's currently 1:1, so it's half the power goes here and half the power goes here. Now the speed does not change. The torque, however, gets halved. That can be shown with another nifty mechanic over here. We have bevel gears. If you have input here, you can have output over here. And this you don't rotate with a screwdriver. You right click on it to get up the user interface. You have down, up, north, south, west and east. And you can see that they gray out in pairs, because if we have the input down we cannot have the output up, because that would be a regular shaft like this. So the bevel gear is also very useful, and let's say we want the power to go from that direction. If you look at the minimap, that's south, or if you press F3 we're facing south, and we want to face west. So from south to west. You can see that is now true. Green here and red here. If you're not colorblind, you can also look at the faces of the block, yellow, blue, purple, and that is also true in the user interface. Yellow, blue and purple, north, up and east. And then we have the clutch. This is another very useful tool, and that can disconnect machines or connect machines so that they do not pass their power or rotational force through this block. And then we have a gearbox. Now we're talking true math and fun math. Bedrock gearboxes don't need lubricant. If we had, let's look at gearbox, a wooden, stone, steel or diamond, they would need lubricant, and they would use the lubricant slowly, but the bedrock one does not. That's why I've gone through using bedrock through the entire episode, because bedrock is awesome and not that hard to get once you know how. So it's currently a 2-to-1 gearbox because that's what we made, and its mode is in torque, which means you will double the torque and half the speed. If we press info on most machines with the user interface, we go to the appropriate page in the Rotarycraft handbook. If we have the Rotarycraft handbook in our inventory, we get the full thing to browse through. Let's say we don't. We can still press the info, but we cannot switch pages. I love this mod. And then we have worm gear. This is a type of gearbox that is not very expensive to make. This one is not very expensive to make, but it's way more expensive than the worm gear. The worm gear is a 16-to-1 gearbox that loses some of its potential. You lose the output speed. The output power is not equal to the input power because it's crappy and it does not need lubrication. Another thing that does not use lubrication, that you will use a lot once you're in the end game, is the CVT unit. It does take lubrication, but only one bucket, and the rest will be filled out with belts. Let's take some belts. And we place them like this, giving us the opportunity to change the belt ratio to, let's say, 4. Now we have a gearbox that is 1-to-4 set to speed. It is now set to torque. And the redstone control here gives you the opportunity to change it with different types of redstone signals. For example, when the redstone signal is high, it's 4 times the speed, and if the redstone signal is low, it's 8 times the torque. This is a setup I used in Feed the Beast Monster to vary the input power to one of the machines in Rotarycraft that processes my ores to an extreme extent, which is awesome. So that's it for the gearing. The flywheel is a nifty mechanic. You can see here that it has a maximum speed and a required and a maximum torque. Now, you need to have 1024 Newton meters to spin this flywheel. If we look at flywheel, you can see that there is a wooden one, a stone one, and an iron one, apart from the golden one we have here. And they all have different weights, giving them different required and maximum torque. The speed, however, is important to remember to look at. We will look at that over there. Oops. And you can use this to smoothen your power output from, let's say, an engine that generates power impulses. So you have a varying output power from the motor, and you want that to be a stable power. You use that to spin up the flywheel, and then the flywheel's weight makes it gain momentum, which then lets it keep this momentum over time. And I will also show you that over there. So forget that for now, and remember that we're going to look at it. One of the most useful tools ever, the dynamometer. This is your angular transducer in a block form, and it also transmits the power. So we have 1.024 kilowatts of power. If we do the same here, we have 512 watts. The speed is 256 radians per second. That is, as we said earlier, maintained through the shaft junction that, as we said, split the power. So it says 1 input and 2 outputs at the moment. But the torque is halved, and therefore the power is halved, because 256 times 2 is 512. And if we look here, you can see that it has the display on both sides. We have the same values as that one. If we go into this one and make it a 3-to-1 inline, inline is inline, and the bend is the bend. So the torque here is 1 Newton meters out of the 4, which is a 3-to-1. Then we have 3 Newton meters on this one. And if we go here, this bevel gear does not take any torque or speed, so the power here is the same as the power here. So power is always maintained, except when using the worm gear, which is here. Then we have, just for an example, a 16x gearbox, or a 16-to-1 gearbox, that is currently set to speed, I believe. I am completely out of it. Let's try it out to be sure. We have 1 Newton meters of torque, 256 radians per second. Put that there, and the dynamometer. We have 16 Newton meters of torque and 16 radians per second. So 1 multiplied by 16 is 16. 256 divided by 16 is 16. And as you can see, the power is maintained. Just to give you an idea of the worm gear, we can put that, let's put that one here, because that's also 1 to 16. So it's 1 Newton meters of torque and 16 Newton meters of torque, but we lost some of the speed. So the power here is not equal to the power on the other side of the worm gear. That's basically all we need to know about how to transmit and calculate power, speed, and torque. what else do we want to look at? We want to look at something in the Rotarycraft handbook that could be very, very confusing for some. We have over here a boring machine, and this, if we go on the top button and then the bottom button above the plus sign, we get the duration time for every single machine. So if we want to calculate the time it takes for the bedrock breaker, which is the one I'm looking at now, the second machine, it takes 600 minus 30 times the logarithmic base 2 of x plus 1. This is for, unless you've studied math, maybe confusing, but it's really not that hard, because a logarithmic base 2 of, let's say, 1 plus 1, which, no, let's take something else. Let's take 15 plus 1. Logarithmic base 2 of 15 plus 1 is 16, and 2 to the power of what is 16? 2 to the power of 4 is 16. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 2, 4, 8, 16. That's how you calculate a logarithmic base 2. And mostly any logarithmical equation ever. And my English in these areas is not that complete, but it's true. So let's go to this area over here, and thank God we are in creative, because stuff will blow up. Oh, I mean, there is a thing called an industrial coil. This is the only block that ever lets you store power, and you input power through to the green one, apply a redstone signal, and it outputs it. And the one I'm using here is the creative mode only, which I can set to whatever I want. So I set it to a bunch of radians per second and an output torque of 2048 Newton meters. And I also hooked it up to a magnetization unit, which we use to magnetize shaft cores. The shaft core is needed in the AC electric engine, which is a kind of an advanced and highly useful engine. Also hooked up to an iron flywheel, because that's appropriate. So if we put on this Steve's Factory Manager redstone clock that we have, which is also needed, now we're getting into this stuff that you need to read up by yourself in the handbook. We have a very fast redstone clock. Give this one power, and we can see that it gets magnetized to micro Teslas, which is an SI unit for magnetization. So if we put that in our inventory, do you know what happens to a coil if you have a magnetization field around it? It outputs the power, or actually it does stuff. That's how it works. So we now have a torque of 236 Newton meters just by me walking around. And we have different speeds here. The flywheel is turning. If we put it in here with the redstone clock, we get 256 radians per second and 512 Newton meters of torque, and a power of 131.072 kilowatts. And we can see that this one does not maintain that at the moment, because the flywheel isn't up to speed. As soon as it's up to speed, it will remain that way. And then if we remove the shaft core, this one remains some of its speed. Over time it will decrease, but it will still output the power for a while. Let's say we have a flywheel that we look at, let's say a golden one. We have a maximum speed of 1410 and a maximum torque of 1496. Let's take that and make it 1500 Newton meters, because it said 14, no, maximum torque 4096. Let's make that 5000, sorry, and a maximum speed of 1410 and an output speed of 1410. What will happen? we can see that it has stabilized at 1k, which is 1000 radians per second. We know that it's 1410 radians per second, but that's basically unimportant. And we have 4096,000 Newton meters. 4,000 Newton meters approximately, but we're inputting 5,000. And as we say here, as we see here, we have a max torque of 4096, and that's all that it can convey through the flywheel. So that's the limit of the torque. And the speed, we know that that's maxed out. Let's say we made it 1411. Boom. Don't do that. Just as a small tip, don't do that. Make sure you look at the handbook. For the next part, I have set up a little log of stone with some iron and diamond ore. I have set up a boring machine, and this setup I made legit in survival on the Feed the Beast monster pack. And just for the fun of it, I'm going to enchant this machine with Silk Touch. Because I'm in creative, that didn't take the book. And then we apply a ton of power and stop it immediately because we need to reset the position. Reset, and the boring machine works as you set the pattern here, any way you want it. And we now have the toggle all button, which is awesome. And the boring machine is basically your quarry that goes on indefinitely in the pattern you choose. And this is how it works. And as you see, we could apply Silk Touch. This is not the end of it. This works forever and ever. You can just run it horizontally forever and ever and just get 700 blocks per second through every boring machine you put down. It does take some getting to... it takes some work to get to the point where you can power a machine that much. But I did in survival, and that was fun. Another thing that is awesome is that it puts down these mining pipes, which stops anything from falling down. And I believe that it actually turns sandstone into... no, sand into sandstone, so that it will never fall down on you even when you remove these. Stuff cannot spawn in here because every block is occupied, but you can move in between them and go down this and go around. Oh, diamond ore. Well, let's go over here. Let's try to get in here and mine that. So we got the diamond ore manually because we need diamonds. And then if you want to remove these, and not just this wall that stops everything from getting out your tunnel, you can just hit one and it takes the entire row, even when you're not in creative. And that is awesome. This machine is awesome. This is the most powerful mining machine ever. And T/player. Yes, perfect. Let's just get some space here. And do this. We have some space. Good. If we go over here, you see we have a spawner, and this is set to peaceful because I don't want mobs. Definitely don't want creepers. This is a monster spawner for zombie, and we can then kill him with this bedrock sword, which has sharpness 5 and looting 5, and a base attack damage of 18.25. I believe a diamond sword has a base attack damage of 6 or 7. Diamond sword plus 7 attack damage plus 18.25, and I also believe that it destroys armor on the one you attack. We have a bedrock pickaxe that is silk touched when you craft it, bedrock axe, and a bedrock shovel. This bedrock pickaxe is not only silk touched, it's actually super silk touch. As you can see, we also have Ender IO giving us the broken spawner. That's not fun. We get the actual monster spawner when we use the bedrock pickaxe That's how sharp the bedrock pickaxe is. And then we come to the bedrock axe. This is probably one of my most favorite items in entire Rotarycraft, because the lumber axe from Tinker's Construct cannot take out as big trees as this one can. It takes out the entire tree. It looks like there's a thing up here. Yes, there's a spawner that we can take with the bedrock pickaxe, and a chest, because I use Twilight Forest big trees stuff. This tree is a bit bigger. Let's try it out. It completely eats the entire tree. The only tree I've managed to not kill entirely is the sacred pack rat thing from Mine Factory Reloaded sapling. This one. No, not that. That's the one we used. From Twilight, not from Twilight Forest. This one. Sacred rubber sapling, pack rat's world chip. If you plant this in your world, I will not be held responsible for any destruction it does, nor any world corruption, because your computer can't handle it, because it's huge. It's extremely huge. There is another tree that I had problems cutting down on the monster server. No, not on the monster server. On another server. And that's the redwood. I'm guessing this one. So if we go into creative, so we can do this. I don't remember how many saplings we need. I believe it's a big area. And if it's not, it won't hurt. And we don't want to die when it grows on us, because we would. Well, meal. Hello. Grow. Grow. There we go. Let's try to get out of here. This tree is also very big. This tree, I know for a fact that it can be a hassle to cut down. It can take up to 2 hours. Or you use your bedrock axe to completely obliterate the tree. Okay, just because I said that, it left these behind because they were not connected to the tree trunk. But they are still short work. So that's the reasons you want to play with Rotarycraft, and some of the necessary maths and some of the unnecessary math, because you can just let Wayla tell you how fast the machine is going. For example, if we start this one, we don't have to calculate the exact speed. The base speed is 36 seconds. The operation time is 0.05 seconds, which is 1 tick. And it takes out 35 blocks per layer. 35 times 20, because 20 ticks in a second, is 700. So yeah. And now it's way off in the distance, because it goes on indefinitely. If you want to know more about Rotarycraft and how to actually play it in a survival setting, Ausyarr, link in description below, has a Let's Play series where he goes through every single block that you need to progress through Rotarycraft the right way and not cheat everything in as I've done here. So thank you for watching, and I hope you learned.